Hello, I am Adam Smith reporting for XTV News. Exeter University's Question Time debate has just finished with candidates leaving the forum's alumni auditorium. What do you think is the most important issue that the nation needs to focus on in the next 4 years?
I think the most important issue is the economy and creating an economy that works for most people. I think the problem we've got at the moment is that our economy doesn't work for most people. We've got a few people at the top getting richer and richer, whereas everybody else are struggling. So I think we have to repay the deficit, but we have to do it in a fairer way, in a more gradual way. We also have to protect our vital public services. I'm really worried that if the Tories get back in, we're going to see even bigger cuts in the next Parliament that we've seen in the current Parliament. I also want Britain to continue to play a constructive role in the world, and I want us to remain a member of the European Union. And I think flirting with leaving the European Union, as the Tories, Greens and UKIP want us to, I think would be a disaster for jobs and investment in our country.
Well, I think that what the nation has the choice or the chance to focus on is a pretty clear choice between what we as the Conservative-led government have achieved in the last 5 years versus the leftmost leaning Labour Party leader for a generation. And I think what that more broadly looks like is we took over in 2010 with a country on its knees, a country divided between an insulated elite who weren't paying any taxes and didn't feel any pain when the crisis came. Those of us in the middle who were really buffeted from the effects of the economic crisis, and those on welfare, trapped in welfare dependency and suspended animation. And I think, judge us on how far we've come in the last 5 years. There's simply a jobs miracle going on. We've created 1,000 jobs every day since we came into power. We're the fastest growing economy in the OECD, in developed countries in the world. And what we've done that whilst having quite a radical, bringing radical reforms to education, health and the welfare state. And that has prioritised education as a route out of poverty, saying education is the way that you lift people and the disadvantaged out of poverty. A welfare reform that is, when we took over, 1 in 5 households had nobody working in the family. That's unacceptable. And now we're seeing workless households at an all-time low. That's because our welfare reforms have driven people into work, back to that security of a pay packet. And we're really proud of what we've done, but there's so much more to do. And I think, the students amongst us this evening will be saying, I'm going to leave university soon, and are there going to be jobs there? And I think the short answer is yes, and it's in large part down to a Conservative-led government who understood that the British public, the British spirit of endeavour, creates jobs when we as politicians step back and allow them to get on.
Okay, so I think, in 2010, the Liberal Democrats went into coalition because, there was a serious job that needed to be done to try and provide the government provide the country with stable government and get our finances back on track and to address the issue of the deficit. And I think we've done that. But I think as we go forward, we need to continue working on that. We've halved the deficit since 2010. We need to continue to work on the deficit and create a stronger economy. But we also need to look forward and think, how do we create a fairer society and how do we protect the people that are most disadvantaged and give them the best life opportunities that we can?
The biggest issue facing the nation is inequality. Over this last government, the rich have got richer and the poor have borne the brunt of the austerity cuts. So if we've got 1% of the population with 55% of the nation's, oh no, I've got it all wrong there. I've forgotten my stat. But we need to actually make sure that inequality is reduced. The number of people using the food bank in Exeter has gone up, and we need to make sure that people are not penalised for the government's ideological withdrawal of benefits and cuts to the public sector. It's affecting our jobs, and it's disproportionately affected women, and it's actually their investment and their recent budget has further invested and further propped up the oil industry, which is actually, alongside fracking, going to be pushing climate change to very dangerous levels. So that is corrupt and it's wrong. And so we need to tackle these issues in order to create a fairer society.
What we need to focus on is finding an alternative way out of this economic crisis which actually serves the majority of people in society who have been badly let down by austerity policies. And this means not just a slightly softer version of austerity like you'll get from Labour, It means not just tinkering around the edges, but actually a fundamental change in the system. What we're proposing is a massive reform to our taxation system, which will redistribute wealth from the very richest to the very poorest. We will also implement a £10 an hour minimum wage immediately, not in 5 years' time or 10 years' time like some of the other parties will propose.
I am here with Keith Crawford for UKIP. How are you, sir?
I've just had a hard time in the auditorium. However, I'm here fighting, fit, and willing to fight UKIP's corner.
Very glad to hear it. So, what do you think the thing is that the nation needs to focus on in the next 4 years?
We first need to focus on getting out of the EU. It's a very expensive club. It costs us £53 million per day, 365 days of the week. The current net contribution is nearly £9 billion per year. Very expensive club, and we get nothing for it. We actually, they export more to us than we do to them. The cost of businesses because of the EU directives is horrendous. And overall, Tim Congdon, a professor, economics professor, has worked out it cost about £198 billion per annum, just being adherent to the directives of the EU. And it's just ridiculous. And the sooner we get out, the better. We'll be able to control our borders, which we can't do now because we're in the EU. And we'll be able to actually implement those things which we can't implement at the moment because we're in the EU. And even the European arrest warrant, and never got mentioned this evening. We used to, before that was imposed on us, we used to have a deportation system. Part of that, which is not now, part of that was to actually go before a British judge, and he would look at the evidence and make a decision. Yes, there's enough evidence there for you to have done something wrong, and you would get deported. Now that facility, that piece of British justice is gone. It's gone. We do not go before a British judge. A magistrate in one of the 28 EU countries, or 27, counting us as number 28, they can hear a complaint from one of their constituents or whatever, and they can issue a European arrest warrant. You get a knock on the door, and off you go to London to be collected. You get incarcerated, and do remember that we operate a system where we're innocent until proved guilty. Over there, the rest of the countries, you're guilty until you prove innocent.